Let's talk about CSS positioning. So up until this point, we've learned how to change the way the text is aligned. So we've learned that we can use the CSS property text align to align the text to the center or left, which is a default, or to the right. But now I want to show you a few more tricks so you can center pretty much anything. So here we have an image, right? And I'm going to change the image size just to make sure that you understand that the image is actually left aligned by default. So here that image is aligned to the left, but there is no way for us, knowing what we know, to center that image. So if I use the text align here, center, the image is not aligned to the center as we would expect it to be. So this is not how you can center an element. I want to show you a few techniques now so you can center this image. To do this, what you want to do is just adding two properties. So every time you want to center
Should I accidentally deleted?
an element, but it's not being centered because it's not text. What you want to do is you want to add these two properties here. The very first one is you want to make sure that the element is displayed block. I will talk a little bit about this in a sec, but first of all, I just want to show you how we can center that image. The second one is we are going to set the margin to 0 auto. All right, these two properties are new to you. You've never seen this before, but you will see that if I reload the page, the image is not going to be centered. By just adding these two properties, we can notice that now the image is centered. Now let's go through a little bit what this means. So in CSS and HTML, every element is either inline displayed or block. It's either a block or it's either an inline element. So if you think about it, let's say I have some paragraph here, and I'm gonna have coding workshop for women. Just want to demonstrate to you how this works. And I'm gonna add a link on coding workshop here. So what I would have to do is I would have to create a link element here, an A element in this case. And I would have to say that I want this to be going to shikos.io. Don't forget to have the HTTPS in this case. Okay, so now this is a link here, which is great. We also can notice that we have this link that is being applied in the HTML section. But you might notice that the for women is still to the right side of coding workshop. So it's not creating a new line right after the link. So if an element is not creating a line before and after, it is called an inline element. So a link is an inline element. But if the element is creating a line before and after, just like this H1 here, this is called a block element. Let me demonstrate it to you here. If I add some words here right after shecode, and I can say is a, something like this, you will see that this sentence here is being displayed after a new line, which is after the H1. It's not being appearing right after the shecodes here. What I mean by this is that every element is either inline or block. If it's block, it's creating a new line before and after. If it is inline, it's not creating a line before and after. And every element has a default behavior. So by default, H1 is a display block element, and image is actually a inline element. If I remove these two lines here that we added earlier, we can see that we have an image to the left side, and if I'm going to add some text after this, is a workshop. When we reload the page, you can see here that the text is being appeared right after the image. So to make the image centered, we cannot keep it as an inline element because there's no way we can center something that is surrounded by other content such as text or images. So to do this, we have to make it a display block element. So we have to make it a block element. So here I will use this property called block, and nothing will change. But the thing is that if I have some text here, is a coding workshop, you will see that this is going to add it after a new line. So actually, we don't see it, but they know that it's a block element. The image has a new line before and after. Now we have to, since it's actually created this line before and after, we have to say that we want to center it. To do this, we have to use the new property that we haven't talked before called margin. We'll learn about how to use margin a little bit later with CSS spacing. But what I want to show you is that by just setting the margin to 0 auto, it's going to center it. And you could resize the window and it's always going to be centered. If I want to center, again, any piece of text, I can just say I want the paragraph to be text align center, and this is going to center this piece of text. The H1 also would work. But if it's something like a link or an image, which are inline elements, you have to make it display block and then margin 0 auto if it's not a piece of text. And if it's a piece of text, you can use text align center, and that would work. So that's all you should remember for now. And then later we'll learn about CSS spacing, which will be using the margin property and the padding property, which are very, very useful. All right, in this challenge, what you have to do is you have to learn how to center elements. So in this case, I'm going to ask you to center this element here, and then also the image. It sounds pretty simple to do, but you have to use these little tricks that I taught you in the previous video. All right, good luck. this is that every element is either inline or block. If it's block, it's creating a new line before and after. If it is inline, it's not creating a line before and after. And every element has a default behavior. So by default, H1 is a display block element, and image is actually an inline element. If I remove these two lines here that we added earlier, we can see that we have an image to the left side, and if I'm going to add some text after this, is a coding workshop. When you load the page, you can see here that the text is being appeared right after the image. So to make the image centered, we cannot keep it as an inline element because there's no way we can center something that is surrounded by other content such as text or images. So to do this, we have to make it a display block element. So we have to make it a block element. So here I will use this property called block, and nothing will change, but the thing is that if I have some text here, is a coding workshop, you will see that this is going to add it after a new line. So actually we don't see it, but there now that it's block element, the image has a new line before and after. Now we have to, since it's actually created this line before and after, we have to say that we want to center it. To do this, we have to use the new property that we haven't talked before called margin. We'll learn about how to use margin a little bit later with CSS spacing. But what I want to show you is that by just setting the margin to 0 auto, it's going to center it. And you could resize the window and it's always going to be centered. If I want to center again any piece of text, I can just say I want the paragraph to be text align center, and this is going to center this piece of text. The H1 also would work. But if it's something like a link or an image, which are inline elements, you have to make it display block and then margin 0 auto if it's not a piece of text, and if it's a piece of text, you can use text align center. and that would work. So show you how you can submit a VS Code file, or every time we ask you to upload
Okay, there is something.
right, let's talk about spacing now. It's really important to understand that in CSS, you can control the spacing of every single element that is being displayed on the page. So to the left side, we can see that we have an H1 here that says she codes, and this is the code that is actually going to create that section. And what I want to do is I want to add some spacing. So first of all, I'm going to go inside my style element, and I'm going to select the H1. And I'm going to set the text line property to center, so it is center. So also going to set the background color to purple or to blue violet, just to make it thinner. And then we can set the color to white. I'll just show you how we can add spacing around this. So as you can notice here, if you move it here, we have some spacing here, but very slight to the bottom and to the top. Well, I'll show you exactly how you can control this. So I'll put a little paragraph here, just to make sure you can actually see the spacing that is going to be added. And I'm going to center the paragraph. All right, let's add some spacing. The first layer that you can add is called padding is a way for us to add some spacing inside the element. So let's say I set the padding to 20 pixels. This is going to be added everywhere on the element. So you can see here that we have some spacing to the top and to the bottom. So if I set the padding to 100 pixels, you will see that this spacing that is inside the element, you can see it because the background color is being applied, is going to increase to 100 pixels. This is very useful if you want to give some spacing inside the element that has some background color. For example, if it's an image, you want to add some spacing to make it breathe, you would use padding for this. Padding can actually be controlled using 4 values if you really want to customize exactly how the padding is on each side. So let me show you how this works. So here we have a padding of 100 pixels, but if I give it 4 values, so I will give it 4 values of 100 pixels, 50 pixels, 100 pixels, 50 pixels. This will actually say that I want to have some spacing to the top, which is 100 pixels, to the right 50 pixels, bottom 100 pixels, and then left 50 pixels. It works clockwise. First value is top spacing, second value is to the left here, and then third value to the bottom, and then the last value to the left side. Okay, let's just give it a 1 value here, so we have some nice little spacing all around she code. Then I want to show you now how margin works. So margin is another layer of spacing that we can add, and it works the exact same way as padding, but the only difference is that margin is a spacing that is outside of the element. So for example, if I set the margin to 20 pixels like this, you will see that it's adding some spacing all around the box here, all around the H1. We have some white spacing here, and it's because it's outside of the element. So margin works the exact same way as padding, so we can give it 4 values. So I can say that I want the top margin to be 20 pixels, I want the left to be 50 pixels, then the bottom to be 100 pixels, and then the left one to be 50 pixels. So top, right, bottom, left. And you can see here that this spacing is being applied. If you want the margin to be the same on each side, to be exactly centered, you can use auto just like we did before. So if we use auto here, something like this, then it's going to be the same margin on each side. This is practical for an element that is not taking the whole width of the page. Now, I want to show you how you can see a margin of any element that is already existing. So you can see how this works precisely. So let's say we have this box here, but I want to see, let's say this is not my code, or maybe this is my code, but I want to see exactly how this works. What I can do is I can click right on this and then inspect it. And by inspecting it, let me just make this a little bit smaller. We can see here, as I mentioned earlier in developer tools, that we can see the HTML to the left side. But what I can see as well is that we have the CSS to the right side. This is a new thing. We didn't talk about this. So here we have the HTML on the left side, and then here on the right side, we have the CSS. The CSS includes different properties that we applied ourselves, like text align, the background color, the color, and we can even play around with this. I can double click here and then change this to blue. And then now it's set to blue, which is great. But if you scroll down on any element, you will see this box here, which is great because it will tell us exactly what the padding is being applied and what margin is being applied. And when you highlight it, when you hover it with your mouse, it will show you using different colors exactly where this spacing is being added. So here I'm hovering the margin, and here I'm hovering the padding. This is great for you to understand how things are working. So here you can see that a paragraph has a margin of 16 pixels by default to the top and to the left, but it doesn't have any margin to the sides and it doesn't have any padding by default. But of course, you can override this value on every single element. So make sure to play around with the margin and the padding to understand how it works, because this is how we can use and add some spacing on any element in HTML from CSS. This exercise, what you have to do is you have to create a button. That is something that I haven't taught you before, but just to give you a hint, there is an HTML element called button. And you have to create a button here that has some specificity. So first of all, that button is centered. As you can see here, this is a button. It might look a little bit different on Windows, don't worry too much. But if this is a button, it has some spacing inside it. It also has some spacing below and above it. And it's centered again, as I mentioned. And that's pretty much it. So that's a button. A button is not a link. It's different. It's not doing anything. You can see here, I click on it, nothing happens. So don't worry about this. That's what we are going to be working on next. But what really matters here is ending the spacing, and then so you can apply those new techniques that I just taught you before. All right, good luck.